First and foremost, to everyone, happy 2024. I hope the year brings you everything that you want and then some. Today's video review is going to be on Armored Core 6, which is kind of silly because I never played Armored Core 1 through 5, so how could I possibly jump into number 6 and understand what's going on? Well, I didn't at first. It took me a little bit of time to understand some of the weapons and the systems. I haven't entirely beat the game yet, but I can tell you that the plot is interesting enough. It's definitely not on the bizarre level of something like Dark Souls or Elden Ring, where there's lots of item descriptions and multiple layers that need to be dissected. This seems to be significantly more linear. That said, there are some very interesting things that happen later on, which I will intentionally not talk about and intentionally not show, which is why I'm showing a mission from very early on in the game. And you can see a little bit of the gameplay and the MECH customization as just kind of talk over my thoughts on the game. I'm playing it on PlayStation 5. It does run at 60 frames a second. And my biggest concern running into this game was, will it perform as horribly as the other From Software titles in the past have performed? And thankfully, it runs well. There's no weird frame pacing issue. There's no screen tearing. There's no weird inconsistency or jittering or anything like that that we've seen on some of their other titles. I know in the past, particularly Elden Ring, if you wanted a true 60 frame per second experience, you were encouraged to play the PlayStation 4 version of the game on your PlayStation 5 hardware. Here, I'm running Armored Core on PlayStation 5, 60 frames a second, and it runs well. So I hope this is a sign of things to come in the future for From Software, because I think that's what's always holding their game back, is whatever engine they use or whatever oversight they have in terms of assets, in terms of whatever they're kind of streamlining the process was not very good. And they seem to have fixed that. So that's really, really good. Yes, there are some pop-ins. Yes, the resolution is a little lower than I would like in certain places, but it's very serviceable. And when you're flying around in your mech and you're getting into battles with other mechs and taking out targets and flying over the sky and raining down rockets and lasers and plasma beams and Gatling gun fire on all your foes below you, it feels great and it doesn't pop you out of the experience. And that's what makes me so happy that they've kind of fixed that. And I wanted to emphasize that first and foremost, because my only real criticism up until this point with any From Software title has always been the difficulty and the graphics. And they've absolutely nailed the graphics. So good job, guys. Since I mentioned difficulty, I'll go ahead and talk about this game, that it does have some interesting difficulty spikes. There are, I want to say, 57 or 58 missions that you'll take on. Some of the missions are very, very basic and are over in just mere minutes. Basic reconnaissance missions, or one-on-ones with other mechs, or flying around and doing some sort of like light attacking on ancillary targets. Some of them are much more in-depth, that have multiple phases and parts, with refueling stations along the way to give you more ammunition and health, and basically that checkpoint system. Some of the missions also have very interesting side objectives for you to take on and defeat particularly challenging enemies to unlock particular rewards. That is to say that the mission structure is great, but the difficulty it varies so wildly from mission to mission. You'll go from, and there was just a mission there I just beat. How long have I been talking? What, 5 minutes, 3 minutes? The mission's over. Some of the missions aren't bad. Some of them are actually really fun. The boss fights are particularly challenging, with multiple parts and different evolutions of the boss cycle that you have to take on, where they'll morph and change into doing different attacks, and they get harder to beat, and it is a lot of fun. Some of the boss fights are stupid easy. Some of them I played 12, 13 times in a row before I was able to actually win. And in a game like this, you are rated against your performance loosely, which is how much health you have at the end of the engagement and how much ammunition you expended in order to defeat the boss. So you might defeat the boss even after a grueling long battle, and because you used more ammunition than the game either wanted you to, or maybe that you needed to, I don't know, you'll get a little bit lower rating, which means you won't get as much money to go back to the store and to buy more stuff. So sometimes victory isn't just victory. You have to do it well if you want to get more money. Now, thankfully, you can grind missions and play the same missions over and over and over and over to your heart's content and continue to get more and more money. Even if you don't do the mission well, it doesn't matter. To continue to get more money, which allows you to then go to the store and upgrade your mech. And that's what you're looking at here. An incredibly detailed breakdown of how to build a mech and all of the various systems and subsystems, whether it's your legs, your arms, your primary guns, your secondary guns, your generator, your shield, your booster, your shoulder. I mean, all these different things. There's a lot of customization here. Not all of it is cosmetic. Some of it is. You can change the paint on just about anything you see. You could put decals and various weather effects on the paint you have. Different types of materials will produce different levels of luster. So if you want more of a flat look or more of a shiny metallic look, you can get that as well. The key when building your mech is there's no right answer. And there's a lot of experimentation that does go into this. And in that sense, going back to a minute ago where I was speaking about how some of the missions are a little bit easier and some are a little bit harder, they are nice to go back and play some of the easier missions on some kind of the zany loadout to see if it actually fits your play style. I'll give you an example. When I first started, I think the default mech that everybody gets, I just had one rocket shoulder pad, an energy sword, and a long range kind of like machine gun type weapon. And just like in a lot of other games that are from software games, they are sort of stamina based. In this sense, when you destroy an enemy shield, they go into this weakened state where your damage is, I don't know if it's completely doubled, but it's significantly higher. So in theory, you would fly at an enemy and maybe lighten them up with your machine gun fire at long range, use your rockets at medium range, and then hopefully if their shields are destroyed, you go in for your energy sword and swing for massive damage, hopefully destroying the enemy. That is one particular play style. For a long time, I was running a kit of 2 shotguns and 2 12, or was it 12 or 8 pod rockets on each shoulder. So 16 rockets and 2 incredibly powerful shotguns at close range. So I'd shoot the rockets at range, and then when the enemies got low health, I'd fly in and I'd basically shotgun them in the face and destroy them. Lots of fun. Later on, you'll find that certain enemies have different sort of resistances, and there are different weapon types, whether it's your kinetic or your pulse or your energy type, like laser weapons. So you have to be cognizant of your loadout there as well. All these things together will help you design what playstyle you want, whether you want to be, light and fast but weaker, or you want to be significantly slower but have significant armaments and just kind of walk down with just massive shields and massive health pools and basically just tank your way through combat. There's no right way to play. And some of the struggle, I think, comes in playing some of the boss fights and some of those particularly challenging sets is maybe the game wants you to do something a little different than what you're currently doing. That's what happened to me the first time I got into a really hard area. Was I was struggling significantly trying to figure out why was I losing so badly, and I couldn't figure it out. And it was because I wasn't nimble enough and I wasn't really upgrading my mech in a proper way. And as a result, I was taking a lot more damage than I probably should have. So those are some difficulty spikes that you're going to have to overcome via trial and error. Now, the good thing is everything you buy, everything you unlock, whether it be through the reward system by taking out elite targets, by doing an arena system where you'll get pieces and parts for taking out more difficult enemies, or anything you buy, it's very easily swapped in and out. It doesn't cost you a lot. And in the parts store particularly, where you're going to get, I'd say, like 90% of your kit, you can fully refund everything for absolutely no penalty. So if you buy the Gatling gun and you don't like it, you could turn around and sell it back and not lose a penny, which is awesome. It really helps out a lot. It gives you significantly better chances of finding something you like. So again, lots of trial and error, but you're going to want to have multiple kits, because as the enemies do start to advance and as the difficulty begins to ramp up, you're going to want to have different looks and loadouts to take on different types of enemies. I've seen some pretty crazy ones online, like a full melee build where you have lots of close range attacks with very high shields or very high mobility. I've seen more of like a sniper build where you're shooting at range. There's lots of different ways to kind of proceed and figure out what build works best for you, and that makes it a lot of fun. So the customization, that loop of trying out a new loadout, going into combat, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, tweaking and replaying is really at the heart of this game. And it does get a lot of fun when you start to unlock a significant amount of parts, because you're going to be able to spend some time and really go through and figure out what abilities you want, and you'll really be able to customize a mech that feels good for you, whether you like to fly more or you like to be more aggressive on the ground. And the customization isn't just limited to a lot of that cosmetics, like I said. You'll get different types of legs. You'll get, you get your traditional legs, like your regular, bipedal, like your legs and your knees, they bend normally. You'll have the ability to have your knees bend backwards, which gives you a higher vertical lift. You'll be able to pick up like 4 or 8-legged kind of like octo treads that give you more stability. And you could even replace your legs entirely for tank treads and drive around on a tank if you want to, which will give you massive load carrying capability, which will allow you to pick up and hold the strongest weapons in the game. Trade-offs to all of these things when it comes to your energy systems and your shield and your boost and your overall health. And all these things have to be taken into consideration to find what style works best for you. And I love that. I love that experimentation. That I feel is something that was really missing in some of the Dark Souls games, where you were kind of forced to go down a particular path because you invested so many points and so many skills and that sort of thing into something. Here, on the fly, if you find a new weapon that you're interested in trying and it messes up your current loadout, it's very easy to completely replace your mech. And since there are saves where you can have preset loadouts, you can quickly switch between your tried and true and maybe an experimental build without any penalty or repercussion. And that, I think, helps a ton. If this game was more locked in place, kind of like a Dark Souls type game, where you were kind of limited to what you bought, I don't think this game would be nearly as fun to play, because the systems do get incredibly advanced if you want them to, down to the point that you're going to have to be cognizant of how much weight your mech has when shooting particular weapons, because the weapons may blow you back. You might not have enough heft to stand there. You might have to actually lean into your shots, essentially, because the guns are so powerful they'll launch you back horizontally, and you might not want that. So lots of attention to detail went into this system. If you don't feel like you have to go down that level, or you want to go down that level, thankfully you don't necessarily have to. You might not be the leanest, meanest, awesomest mech in the planet, but you'll be serviceable. You'll be able to find pretty much any build that works for your particular play style. There are definitely builds online where people have gone to the trouble of minning and maxing some of the statistics and attributes, but you don't necessarily have to go down that road if you don't want to. So I think they did not do a phenomenal job of not scaring people away, and I wonder if that's why this game was, reviewed the way it was. And I think it was overwhelmingly positive, but there was a lot of concern from people in the reviews that I had read over, does it really work for casual fans? And as I said at the beginning of this video, it's the first Armored Core I've ever played, and I did okay. I'm doing just fine. Working through the missions, I haven't really got stumped on any particularly overwhelmingly hard challenges that I couldn't beat with a little bit of grinding, a little bit of tweaking, which I think is to be expected anyway, right? I mean, I don't think they expect you to beat this game with your default loadout perfectly on the first try. You're going to come into challenges and find things that work and don't work, and you're going to have to tweak your build and become a more effective mech fighter, which is cool. As the game progresses, you will unlock more things to do. You'll unlock a challenge arena where you'll fight off against AI opponents in these one-on-one mech duels. There's a PvP mode where if you want to take your, try to climb that world rank and be the best player you can. There are different augmentations you get that are more like passive abilities that will generally make certain weapons just be better than others. You'll also find new abilities altogether, like a melee attack at the end of your boost, so you can boost right into an enemy and kick them off a cliff, which is really a lot of fun too. So I never felt like I wasn't being rewarded. I will say that at the end of towards the end of where I'm at, I'm getting into chapter 3, and the story is starting to pick up intensity, and it's I think I know where the story is kind of going. I'm not entirely sure, but those upgrades that you get later on, some of the big ones, will require you to grind a bit. You'll have to do 2 or 3 missions in order to save up enough money, because they're in the upwards of like $400,000 for a single part, which is kind of annoying. However, for the most part, up until that point, you're pretty much going to get instant gratification. You're going to do a mission, you're going to immediately go back to the armory, and you're going to have enough money to proceed and play another level and to buy more stuff and to continue in that way. And I love that because it does give you that carrot stick risk reward, does give you that gratification. Go out there and try something, save up some money, buy a cool upgrade. It will radically change the way you play. If you love it, keep it. If not, refund it and go buy something else. Rinse and repeat over and over again. There are some really amazing levels like the one you just saw me beat here, where you're taking out this massive Strider, basically dismantling it piece by piece. And some of the explosions and the graphics and the sound effects and the feel of the haptic feedback and all that stuff, it hits so well. My biggest single criticism with the game, and I saved it to the end as I start to wrap up my review on this game, my biggest criticism is that everything is voiceover. And I think that does somewhat of a disservice because it's hard to identify with just the random voices you hear on comms. You don't get a sense of connection or a sense of kind of like camaraderie with them the way that you would maybe in some other games. And that's not to say that voiceovers don't ultimately work in some regard, but since you don't really ever see anything, you're just hearing your handler talk with other clients and you're being briefed by other clients on stuff, it's hard to really grow connection to what you're doing. I get it. The undertone of the game is you are a mercenary and you're basically just being sold out to the highest bidder and you're doing missions in order to, you know, get rich on this nutrient, this coral nutrient that exists in this planet Rubicon. I get that, and I understand in that sense why you might not really care who's giving you missions, and you might not really care who your handler is because you're just there for money. However, I think it does kind of an emotional disservice when you start to realize, at least I did, probably about the end of chapter 1, you're doing missions against these two factions. You'll take a mission with like Group A to attack Group B and then immediately turn around and attack Group A because Group B paid you. And you can hear in some of the enemies you fight the voice comms that they do because you can intercept their comms and listen to them communicate. You can hear that sense of betrayal and frustration and like, oh my God, why are they attacking us now? Or what do we do? Or you find these data logs of pilots who've been destroyed in the past or who are fighting for what they thought was a better tomorrow, allying with one group over another. And that emotional connection is kind of lost. And I think that had there been either in-scene videos or more cinematics that really relate to the characters and to the story, I think you probably would have had a better emotional connection. Would I say you need to play this game simply to enjoy the story? No. It definitely, at least not through chapter 3. There are some interesting little twists and turns along the way. There are some cool things that happen that I'm intentionally not talking about. But I think the joy of this game is in this screen here. It is in buying and building the perfect robot. It is going out into combat and destroying enemies with a very carefully crafted arsenal that works for your play style, and being dominant on the battlefield and watching explosions and flames and bombs go off all around you as you're basically just this juggernaut of destruction, just, you know, bending the battlefield to your way. To me, that's the journey. And when you start building up parts and you understand how some things start to synergize together and you have the best loadout and you're pushing your character's weight limit to its max and you're squeezing out every little bit of, you know, offense that you can, that's when it's fun. That to me is when it really hits. And that's why I think a lot of people maybe turned off on this game early, because while you are building stuff, it doesn't really make sense, but it will start to click and you'll start to realize how powerful you can be. And for that reason, I do like this game and I do recommend it. That's been my review of Armored Core 6. I might come back at the end after I've completed the story to do like a spoiler cast. Those videos don't really seem to do very well for me on my channel when I kind of deep dive my thoughts on the story or the emotional impact. There's really not much of that hook here, so I'm not saying I will or won't. Obviously, if there's demand for it, I'll consider it, but largely this will probably be my single review on this game. But that said, I hope you guys have an awesome 2024. Go out there and play some games. If it's not Armored Core, you know, I don't know what other mech games out right now really service this action adventure kind of, you know, this kind of mentality where you get to fly around and try out these crazy guns and blow stuff up. It is a lot of fun. It's very satisfying. So for that reason, like I said, I think it's something you should check out. All right, that's it for me. Take care of yourselves, everyone. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.